You are warm right now, without even thinking about it. You can reach out, tap a small piece of plastic on your wall, and force the air inside your room to stay at a perfect 21 degrees Celsius. You have a refrigerator humming in the kitchen filled with preserved calories. You have insulated walls keeping the wind out, and layered clothing designed to trap your body heat inside a personal microclimate. Now systematically strip all of that away. Take away the thermostat. Take away the brick and timber. Take away the light bulbs, the synthetic jackets, the grocery stores, and every single system humanity has built over the last 10,000 years to trick nature into keeping us comfortable. Imagine walking out onto an endless, windswept steppe 30,000 years ago. You are standing in the middle of the Last Glacial Maximum. The air temperature is minus 30 degrees. The wind feels like crushed glass against your face, and you have nothing, literally nothing, except your own body and a drop in temperature that turns your breath into frost before it even leaves your lips. Most history documentaries will tell you how ancient humans survived the Ice Age. They will list off sewing needles made of bone, animal hide wraps, and basic fire pits. But that misses the real, darker question. The question isn't just how our ancestors kept their blood moving through the cold. It's what they were forced to do to keep it moving. When nature strips away every safety net, morality stops being a set of ideals. It becomes a matter of cold, brutal mathematics. To understand those choices, you first have to understand just how little time an unprotected human body actually has when the temperature drops. At 37 degrees Celsius, your body is functioning normally. But if your core temperature falls just 2 degrees, down to 35, your brain triggers an emergency response. Vasoconstriction slams your peripheral blood vessels shut. Your body actively sacrifices your fingers, toes, and skin, pulling all available warm blood inward to protect your vital organs. If your core drops to 32 degrees, severe hypothermia sets in. Shivering, your body's violent, last-ditch effort to generate mechanical heat, stops entirely. Your muscles freeze into rigidity. By 28 degrees, cardiac arrhythmia begins. Your heart slows to an irregular, sluggish thud. Hallucinations set in. In many cases, dying individuals experience terminal burrowing, an instinctual, animal drive to crawl into tight, dark spaces or dig into frozen dirt, shortly before slipping into unconsciousness. Without specialized gear, fire, or shelter, an ancient human exposed to sub-zero temperatures and high winds had a survival window measured not in days, but in minutes. The margin between living to see the sunrise and becoming part of the permafrost was paper-thin. And that extreme urgency dictated every decision early human bands made. Consider where you hide when there is nowhere to hide. During the Upper Paleolithic era, vast stretches of Eurasia were covered in mammoth steppe, a biome characterized by freezing winds, permafrost, and an absolute absence of trees. There was no wood to build frame structures. There were no natural cave systems for miles in any direction. There was only flat, frozen earth and endless snow. So what do you build a home out of when nature offers no wood, no stone, and no shelter? In 1965, near the village of Mezryk in central Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered the answer. Dating back approximately 15,000 years, excavations revealed a series of ancient dwellings unlike anything seen before. They weren't built of timber or earth. They were built entirely out of the skeletal remains of woolly mammoths. A single shelter at Mezryk utilized the bones of up to 95 to 150 individual mammoths. Think about the sheer scale of that material gathering. These ancient engineers didn't just pile up random bones. They executed deliberate, complex structural architecture born out of utter necessity. The foundations were anchored using heavy mammoth skulls, faced outward to block the howling Arctic winds. The walls were constructed by interlocking hundreds of jawbones, stacked precisely like masonry bricks or roof shingles. Long, curved tusks were arched over the top of the structure to form structural roof rafters, which were then draped in heavy, scraped animal hides and weighed down with earth and additional leg bones. Inside these bone fortresses, central hearths burned melted animal fat and crushed bone fragments for fuel, keeping the interior temperatures survivable even when the air outside dropped far below freezing. Dr. Olga Sofer, a leading anthropologist from the University of Illinois, who spent decades analyzing Paleolithic sites across Eastern Europe, noted that the construction of a single mammoth bone dwelling required hundreds of hours of intense physical labor and precise resource selection. Specific bones were chosen for specific engineering tasks: long limb bones for load-bearing posts, flat shoulder blades for draft seals, dense skulls for windbreakers. This wasn't opportunistic scavenging. It was extreme, calculated engineering in a landscape where a single structural failure meant freezing to death overnight. Imagine sleeping inside a dome constructed entirely from the rib cages, jaws, and skulls of massive extinct beasts, knowing it was the only barrier separating your family from the freezing cold. As severe as building bone shelters was, the physical structures were only half the battle. The real terror of an ancient winter didn't come from the cold outside. It came from the pantry running empty inside. During an Ice Age winter, hunting success plummeted. Game animals migrated, snowdrifts made tracking nearly impossible, and stored dried meat decayed or ran out. When a band of 20 or 30 people was trapped inside a shelter during a weeks-long blizzard, they were faced with a finite number of calories and an unknown number of days until the thaw. This brought them face to face with the cold logic of human caloric survival. Anthropological studies of modern and historical high-latitude hunter-gatherers, such as those conducted by anthropologist Dr. Louis Binford, reveal the horrifying precision required to manage winter stores. An active adult human in Arctic conditions requires upwards of 4,000 calories a day just to maintain body mass and core heat. When stores dropped below critical thresholds, ancient bands had to make choices that shatter modern sensibilities. Rationing wasn't equal. It couldn't be. In many desperate extreme survival situations documented across historical hunter-gatherer societies, food distribution was prioritized based on immediate survival capability and reproductive future. High-value hunters and active caregivers were often allocated larger rations to ensure the group maintained the physical capacity to forage and defend itself. This meant that the vulnerable, the chronically ill, the severely injured, and sometimes the very young or very old, were forced to survive on minimal rations. In verified ethnographic records from Arctic populations living in similar extreme conditions, practices like selective care or weaning adjustments during catastrophic famines were documented not as acts of malice but as devastating triage. If a mother did not consume enough calories, her body stopped producing milk. If she attempted to divide scarce food equally among all dependents, the entire family risked starving together before spring. It was a nightmare equation: divide the food equally and guarantee that everyone weakens and dies, or divide it selectively so that at least some survive to keep the lineage alive. Perhaps the most terrifying choice an ancient group faced occurred when a camp became completely uninhabitable, forcing a midwinter migration. Moving a group through knee-deep snow at -20 degrees is a brutal test of speed. Every hour spent exposed on the open plain drains precious body heat and burns irreplaceable calories. If someone in the group couldn't keep pace, a member with a broken bone, a severe fever, or advanced age, the entire group faced a catastrophic choice. Archaeological sites across northern Eurasia show evidence of high physical trauma among Paleolithic populations. Healed fractures, severe osteoarthritis, and joint degeneration were common. But during a deep winter push between shelter sites, carrying an incapacitated adult required 2 to 4 strong group members. That reduced the band's travel speed by half and doubled the energy expenditure of the carriers. Anthropologist Dr. Colin Turnbull and other ethnographers studying human behavior under extreme resource scarcity noted that when survival margins drop to zero, group cohesion undergoes violent stress. In historical high-latitude survival records, when an individual could no longer walk during a critical winter trek, the decision was sometimes left to the individual themselves, or forced by the group. The weak were left behind. Sometimes an elderly member would voluntarily step away from the fire or linger behind the migrating column, knowing their absence gave their grandchildren a higher chance of reaching the next shelter. In other instances, individuals were left in small temporary windbreaks with a single piece of fat and a small fire, while the main group pressed onward, knowing that to stop was to die. There are dark, subtle markers in the archaeological record, isolated human remains found without formal burial context on open plains, dating to periods of sudden climatic cooling. They tell a quiet, horrifying story, a story of footsteps continuing forward through the snow, while one set of footprints simply stopped. It is easy for us, sitting in climate-controlled rooms with endless food at our fingertips, to look back at these choices and judge them as barbaric. It is easy to view these ancient people as cold, unfeeling survival machines who traded human affection for raw calories. But that is a profound misunderstanding of history. Archaeology gives us undeniable proof that these people loved each other deeply. At the Upper Paleolithic site of Sunghir in Russia, dating back roughly 30,000 years, archaeologists discovered the graves of 2 young children buried together during the cold peak of the Ice Age. They were adorned with over 10,000 mammoth ivory beads, carved animal amulets, and polished spears. Creating those burial items required thousands of hours of painstaking labor, hours spent carving, polishing, and sewing in dark, cold shelters. You do not spend thousands of hours crafting intricate ivory beads for children you do not love. You do not carry a disabled group member across thousands of miles of rough terrain, as evidenced by numerous Paleolithic skeletons showing healed severe injuries, unless you value their life deeply. The terrifying choices our ancestors made were not driven by a lack of empathy. They were driven by the overwhelming weight of impossible math. When an ancient parent was forced to make a devastating choice during a famine, or when a group left a fallen companion in the snow, it wasn't because they didn't care. It was because they carried the terrifying burden of knowing that if everyone died, the entire story of their people ended right there in the ice. Every hard decision was a desperate, heartbreaking transaction to buy one more day of life for those who remained. Look back at the room around you right now. Look at the light on your ceiling. Feel the warmth of the air coming through your vents. Listen to the quiet safety of your home. That comfort feels natural to us. It feels like the baseline of human existence, but it isn't. It is a total accident of history. Your presence here today, sitting in a warm room, watching this video, breathing comfortably, is the end result of an unbroken chain of survival that stretches back through hundreds of frozen winters. You exist because thousands of years ago, on a desolate steppe in the dead of an ice age winter, someone made the hardest choice imaginable so that their child might live long enough to see the spring. They endured the frost, the bone-chilling dark, and the crushing moral weight of survival so that their bloodline could continue. The coldest, cruelest seasons in human history didn't just test our physical endurance. They forged our capacity for cooperation, forced us to engineer incredible solutions out of mammoth bone and hide, and shaped the deep, protective instincts that bind families and communities together today. We are not separate from those desperate survivors on the icy plains. Their resilience is written into our DNA, and every time we step inside out of the cold and turn up the heat, we are enjoying a luxury paid for by the impossible choices of those who came before us.